FSH, LH, AMH, estradiol, progesterone. These hormones are the markers for fertility and often the first tests that are reviewed when we start our fertility journey. But what do they really mean? And what clues do these tests give us about our body and fertility? And more importantly, what can be done about them? My guest, Dr. Aumatma, is a double board certified naturopathic endocrinologist and is an authority in the fertility community. Listen as she masterfully explains our body systems for fertility in easy to understand terms and breaks down the false narratives surrounding your hormones. We'll cover exactly which hormones are related to your fertility, how to measure them, and what you can do to correct hormone imbalances to optimize your fertility. And bonus, she'll also share a variety of free resources to support you now. If you're trying to conceive, this is the episode to listen to. Welcome to the Tru Fertility Podcast. I'm your host, Lea Nicole Trujillo, therapist turned fertility emotional wellness coach, and I'm here to share the tools that helped me and my clients reclaim their joy, unpause their lives, and triple their pregnancy rates. With a 100% success rate in emotional well-being and a 60% pregnancy rate, I'm here to radically transform your journey. Join me and my amazing guests for expert strategies, practical tips, and real-life trying to conceive stories with a dash of girl talk. So let's sprinkle some baby dust because it's time for Tru Fertility. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Tru Fertility Podcast. I am so thrilled to be here today with a dream guest, if there ever was one, and that is Dr. Aumatma. So thank you so much for being here. I am totally fangirling over the fact that you agreed to be on my show today.
Oh, yeah. I'm honored. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I personally have actually seen Dr. Aumatma in some summits and seen her videos, seen some of her podcasts, and she is just packed with a wealth of information. And you can always just see the passion of her craft oozing from her. I can tell she's so passionate about her work. I am also in awe of how humble she is and how willing she is to work with practitioners across the field of varying degrees of wherewithal within the industry. So I really appreciate that about her as well.
You're too sweet.
It's so
You don't have
true.
to say to that.
Yes, I just genuinely admire you for all of those things. And so, again, when she shared that she'd be interested in being on the podcast, I honestly had a little bit of a hard time narrowing down what I wanted to ask her to speak about for a topic for today. She's covered so many different topics on other summits and conferences, but we will be talking today specifically about hormones. If you guys don't know, Dr. Aumatma actually is a double board certified naturopathic endocrinologist, and she's been in practice for close to 20 years. She founded the Holistic Fertility Institute to support badass power couples to create the family of their dreams and to train doctors who want to specialize in fertility. She's also the best-selling author of Fertility Secrets, What Your Doctor Didn't Tell You About Baby Making, and she's on a mission to help bring healthier babies into the world by creating healthier parents and a healthier planet. To expand that mission, Dr. Aumatma co-founded Madre Fertility, which is a smart fertility analysis that individualizes people's fertility journey through diet, lifestyle, and supplements based on key data. Dr. Aumatma has been featured on ABC, Fox, CBS, KTLA, Mind Body Green, and The Bump as the holistic fertility expert. And of course, you can always reach out to work or train with Dr. Aumatma. She has an Instagram account at Holistic Fertility Doctor, also TikTok with the same handle, or go to her website at www.holisticfertilityinstitute.com. And I will, of course, put that information on the show notes.
So fun.
Yeah.
It's always weird to hear your bio read back. So yeah, I guess that's me.
You're like, I haven't done a lot actually over the course of my career, right? Yeah. But before we get into our hormone talk today, I really wanted the chance to get to know Dr. Aumatma on a little bit more personal level for you guys. So I have my traditional 3 rapid fire questions. So the first one I have for you is, again, as I just mentioned, you have a podcast. You post or you air an episode like multiple times a week.
Mhm.
So you're really on it. And
Yeah.
so my question to you then, are you a very techie person? Tell me about that.
No,
No.
totally not. Yes and no. How about this? Yes, I love tech, and if I had all the time in the world, I would do everything myself.
Yes.
But I don't have all the time in the world, and I really like you said, with the amount of content that we're generating, it's really hard to keep up with all of it, so I have an internal tech team that
Oh.
handles all of it.
So you are interested in tech, but in your business world, you don't tend to be the one to actually handle or to do that
Yeah,
portion of it. You're
yeah,
the brains
exactly.
behind the mission here.
Yeah, and I train doctors. Part of my thing is we need to know what's out there, and we need to know, like, how to use what's out there. We don't necessarily need to fulfill on every single piece. Like, how we do that is get really educated. I did an 8-month course on AI for my
Wow.
business, but obviously, I'm not gonna be the AI person, right? I have a full-time job. But the goal was really learn what everything is and learn how it can be applied, create the strategy, and then someone else can go and implement. So our tech team has an AI person that's dedicated to growing how much AI is informing our
Hmm.
business and our practice and the way that we support people,
Hmm.
because technology is amazing when you know how to use the tools,
Hmm.
but yeah, I just don't have the time to fulfill everything.
Life lessons here. Thank you so much for sharing
It
that with
is
us.
true for everything. I say this to our clients, if you're not good at making your food, who else in your life is good at making the food? Like,
Delegate, delegate.
delegate.
Yes.
Yes, and we
That
need to be those examples.
that
So,
is
yeah.
actually something that I talk to my clients about as well, delegating. Yes. I'm glad we're on the same
Yeah.
page there.
Yeah.
Okay, next question I have for you is I see you. Did you grow up in California? You lived in California for a long period of your life?
Yep. I lived in California for 15 years.
Uh-huh.
I did
Wow.
not grow up there. I grew up on the East Coast.
Oh,
And now I live in Texas.
yes,
So
you're a Texas
we're going
newbie.
from one end to the other.
Yes, and I also live in Texas as well. We were just talking about this. I live in San Antonio and I'm a native Texan, so I grew up
Mm.
here and everything. But I wanted to ask you, what what have you noticed about the cultural differences between spending so much time in California versus being in Texas? And what pieces of the California lifestyle are you still holding on to? And what pieces of the Texas lifestyle are you starting to embrace?
I love Texas. I am very surprised about that
Uh-huh.
because I did not expect to love Texas. I was like, "Oh, it'll be okay. We'll adjust." The
Mhm.
reality is it's so community oriented where we are.
Yeah.
This is literally what I wanted to be creating in California, but it felt like such an effort because California is, like, so transient. People are in and out.
Mhm.
There's very few roots, and you may plant your roots 20 minutes from your best friends, and then you're like, "Oh, we're so far away, we never have time to see each other." You know what I mean? I do not miss that part. Texas is we're already in a built-in community. My child has tons of kids to play with. We're literally talking about putting, a ladder in our backyard so that he could pop into his other friend's house.
That is so
Because it's
cool.
connected to their backyard, and they're all constantly going up and down this fence, which is very unsafe. We're like, "Let's just put a ladder in, and then they can hop back and forth as many times as they want, and we don't need to worry about it."
I love
Uh,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
and I hear you on that kind of people being very transient. I also spent like 7 years in Austin, and I feel like
Mhm,
that's also the culture there. Nobody was
mhm,
really from Austin, so it's
mhm.
like you'd make friends, but then they'd move somewhere in a year or 2, and so it was like
Yeah,
starting over again in a way.
yeah,
But yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Okay, last question I have for you. Did you grow up with a holistic approach to medicine and health? Or is that something that you learned throughout your time and studies as a naturopathic doctor?
Mhm. Kind of, yes. I grew up with it in the sense that my parents never brought me to a doctor.
Wow.
I had my first OB visit when I was 18, and that was the only one till I, like, turned 27 or something.
Wow.
And and every time we got sick, it was like, "Here, drink this nasty tasting tea or do this or do that." It was all these home remedies. My dad thought he was essentially Ayurvedic homeopathic doctor,
Yeah.
which he never was. He's never trained, right? But he was like, "I got this. You're
Yeah.
sick? Here, take this.
Yeah.
You're not feeling well? Take this." They wanted me to be a conventional doctor, yet everything in my life pointed to this more natural
Yeah.
way of doing things.
Yeah. So you went a little bit against the grain from what they want, but actually in
Mhm.
line with what they taught you,
Yes.
essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was they were trying to do what we say, not what we do. I was like,
Yes.
"Yeah, that doesn't make sense."
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, the last question I have for you as far as getting to know you is if you don't mind sharing a little bit more about your personal story and how you got to do what you're doing now with supporting women with fertility.
Some of you may have heard this story, but I'll try to keep it concise. I was married to this man. He was talking about having babies, and literally every time he would mention baby, my uterus would cringe and just, God, no, stop. And I was like, oh crap, I'm already married. Like, it's the expectation. You get married, everyone's like, when are you having a kid? And at the time, I had already been, like, not fully doing fertility, but lots of women's health stuff, and, uh, that little trigger of being like, "No, I don't wanna have children," I really was like, "Oh, shit, what does this mean? Am I gonna be okay
Hmm.
if I don't have children with him? Do I want to have children? Does that mean I need to go find myself in a different relationship?" And which means, like, a divorce and, like, really upending my life in so many ways. And so I went into a deep, journey with it, and I came out on the other side 9, 10 months later, literally, like, birthing a baby, where I had dove deep enough into the fertility world and understood that I could preserve my fertility, that what I had been taught in medical school and heard all of my life is that our fertility drops off of a cliff, which is not really true, and really come out of that research on the other side with an acknowledgement and an empowerment of I can do this and I choose to wait. I choose to wait for the right person. And it's not that I don't want to have a kid, it's that I don't want to have a child with you. Our relationship's done. So I went through like a major just
Yes.
but I think that I've heard so many women say to me, "Oh my god, I was with this guy. I don't want to have kids with him, but should I just have a kid because I really want to have a child, and if this is my only opportunity, then I don't want to miss out on it."
I fell into
And
that path too for a period of time, and it was
oh,
a relief that I actually did not get pregnant, even though
yes.
we like did a medicated cycle. But yes.
Yes. Yeah, I am relieved like almost every day. Every time I look at my kid, I'm like, thank God I didn't have a kid with that. Like it's such a feels negative to say, but I feel like a child truly is this expression of love, and to be able to have the partners that created that child together, and not everyone is in a relationship, not everyone stays in those relationships. I just think that if you know already that's the wrong person, then
Hmm.
why, right? For me, it was not the right thing to do. So that's really what led me into fertility. But in the process of doing all this research for myself, I realized just like how much couples are being lied to and brought into this energy of fear as the way to you need to do this now or it's never going to happen. versus kind of the ease that I feel like I had the opportunity to have
Mhm.
because I had, at least for myself, debunked so many of those myths that
Mhm.
I've been told and taught. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I would just share about it. And
Yeah.
people were like, great, you can help me have a baby. And I'm like, all of this is theory, you guys. Just theory. Here's all the research, but
Yes.
I've never done this before.
But
So I basically tried to persuade her out of working with me. And I was like, I've never done this before. I have lots of theories, but there's no guarantee that this is going to work.
Mhm.
It's not going to be cheap. It's definitely not free, even though you're my first like fertility person.
Mhm.
And there's no guarantee. And she
Yeah.
like called back on Monday morning and she's, you're the weirdest doctor ever, but I'm very clear you can help me. And I was like, oh, well, guess
Wow.
we're doing this fertility thing.
Oh, hey, it was meant to be, but that is like the absolute opposite of what any business coach. They'd probably be cringing if you had like a sales or business coach
Yeah.
person at
The
that point in
opposite
time.
of a sales pitch.
Yeah, the opposite, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, but still
Yeah.
worked, so
Yeah.
that's awesome.
3 months later, she got pregnant.
Uh-huh.
She had had multiple pregnancy losses. So she freaked out. We supported her through the pregnancy. She had a healthy baby. So that was my first. And by the time she had a baby, there were a few others that had gotten pregnant. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh my God, this is so addictive.
Like, I want
Just,
this.
yeah, being able to see the transformations that people have and being able to support people in a phase of life that's just so hard, it
Mhm.
feels good. I know, I'm sure.
Yes, I am starting to get to the addicting point. I'm like, this is amazing. I love seeing all these successes and just people
Yeah.
feeling better overall too. Just the emotional toll and the weight of it is
Mhm.
it's a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
great to see people feeling better and also getting pregnant. So yes, love
Yeah.
that. Speaking of feeling better and getting pregnant, let's get into the meat of our session today, which is all about hormones and fertility. So I just wanted to start and open up the conversation with what hormones play an integral role in fertility. Can you point some out to us?
So the major hormones that we think of when we say fertility are the ones that are reproductive hormones. FSH, LH, estradiol, progesterone, and then AMH as a marker for potentially how many eggs we have left in the ovaries.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue that true reproductive harmony is actually an array of hormones that are not included in that.
Hmm.
So all of our thyroid hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline, all of our neurotransmitters, like insulin, the regulation of blood
Yeah.
sugar, all of those are actually creating the environment that's giving a signal to the reproductive system to indicate whether or not we are okay to have a child right now or we're not.
Mm.
And
Okay.
those are actually the regulatory points that are turning on or off our fertility switch. So many people go into fertility talking about the fertility hormones, when in fact, if we don't realize that our body is connected and the reproductive system is actually like the first place that our body has leverage to take away energy if we don't need it right now.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's not, reproductive system is not necessary to survival, right? If I shut down my reproductive system, will I continue to exist? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's no leverage. So the body says, I need to conserve my energy. I have too much going on. I'm dealing with too many things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the excess energy to produce a child. Let me turn that off for a while I focus on surviving.
Yeah.
And so many of us are in survival all the time that we never turn that system back on. And the longer we spend in that survival energy, the harder it is to shift back into that reproductive energy. I think that the more I've gotten into this, the more I've trained people, the more I see, I'm like, this is bigger than reproductive hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And those other things are often the things that get missed,
Mm-hmm.
really, when we're talking about fertility. I
Yeah.
wanted to just highlight that.
No, I love that. So it's basically an integrative system, essentially. And again, our fertility is the outcome almost of this whole integrative system. And again, it's an indicator of almost our overall health or well being or ability to function as a whole system. Okay. So then, since we're noticing that there can be significant differences in our hormones or levels there, what causes deviations in our hormones?
That's a good question. I think that obviously different things are impacting our hormones all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main impacts externally are toxins. So I did experiment.
Mm.
I went to this massive conference. There's 2,000 people at this conference every year.
Wow.
And I interviewed a bunch of random doctors, right? And not fertility experts, not like
Uh-huh.
specialized in any way, right? They're just
Uh-huh.
functional medicine doctors. And I just went up to random people and I was like, so fertility is massively declining. What do you think is the cause? And literally 100% of 98% of people were like toxins.
Uh-huh.
And so on some level, everybody in the medical world realizes and recognizes that fertility is being impacted by toxins. And we, as women that are on this journey potentially to become parents, also realize that toxins are impactful. But the extent of those toxins is really like an onion, right? You just keep peeling away and you're like, how big is this onion?
Yes.
So it's constant. We just have to be constantly aware of how many toxins are in our environment, what are we exposing our bodies to, and how can we limit what we're exposing our bodies to. So
Mm-hmm.
that, I think that would be the starting point. But it doesn't end there. We have toxins inside our body. Every time we maybe skip a meal or we eat something that wasn't aligned for our body or we didn't get enough rest, right? Basic things can massively give the signal of, oh, got to turn on survival super strong, which means turn off reproduction. So
Mm-hmm.
our hormones are really like a harmony that's constantly being regulated
Mm-hmm.
by every signal that we have in our body. And that doesn't mean to get super OCD about, oh my God, my hormones are out of whack. But to really take a step back, I've heard so many people talk about hormonal balance, right? But we're really waking up to the fact that there is no hormone balance. It's really, are the hormones working in coherence within the body system, and are all of them together that sending energy towards reproduction or survival? And
Mm.
anything that can throw you from reproduction to survival is affecting your hormones and fertility negative.
Okay. Yeah. So toxins, environmental stressors, internal stressors, taking just general taking care of your body and what we, in that sense, can throw off your
Yeah.
hormones and make it not function in the way that's conducive to fertility, essentially. What about something like when there's like maybe one hormone out of whack?
Lots of women are like, oh, I'm estrogen dominant. I'm like, oh, we don't actually know that's true.
Yeah.
You're basing it on symptoms that may or may not be true.
Uh huh.
And estrogen and progesterone are constantly in cahoots with each other.
Yeah.
If you don't make enough estrogen to offset the progesterone, or you don't make enough progesterone to offset estrogen, that leads to imbalances that can show up as short cycles, long cycles. It can vary
Yeah.
in depending on what the ratios are. But there it's really like almost always when one hormone is out of whack, there are going to be other multiple hormones that are out of whack because
Yeah.
it's pulling on a string that where all the strings are attached. You know what I'm talking about? So
Yeah.
you pull on one and then another one goes out of whack.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So we just really need to dig a little deeper, look at the full puzzle, look at all the puzzle pieces and put them together and really seeing holistically again what's going on.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because so many times, and I feel like even functional medicine doctors do this, it's, oh, you're deficient in this thing. Let's load you up with that.
Yeah.
You don't make enough progesterone. That's why you're not getting pregnant. Let's give you progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And without taking a step back and saying, what's the cause? Like, why isn't this person making enough progesterone? Is it that her body is so much in a stress state that turning off the progesterone production is actually the signal to the body, like, hey, we're not trying to get pregnant. We
Mm-hmm.
please shut that down
Mm-hmm.
for our safety and survival.
Mm-hmm.
That's option A. B is, oh, you don't have enough of the building blocks to actually make that progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
Or C, you have so poor egg quality that corpus luteum doesn't survive 14 days and is instead more at like a 7 days or 8 days of production, and then it trickles off.
Mm-hmm.
And every single one of those really requires a different approach to and
Yeah.
getting those hormones to get back into reproductive harmony versus survival.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how can we dig deeper? We talked about like knowing, okay, if that's a concern, how do we know if maybe the other hormones are out of whack? How do we assess them? And how often are you supposed to reassess hormones?
That's a great question. So normally I would answer that question with get tested. Don't guess, test. And the testing is multiple layers of testing, right? There's the layer that you can start with, which is get your basic fertility hormones tested. That's the estradiol, FSH, LH, AMH, progesterone.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be done on different days. A progesterone 5 to 7 days post ovulation.
Uh-huh.
Um, the other hormones are usually day 3 or 4. So you want to do them like in the early part of your cycle. That's actually like where all of them flatline. So you can get
Okay.
them at their baselines. And then it's like a symphony, right?
Yeah.
FSH spikes, then estrogen spikes, then LH spikes. And each one is signaling the next. So it's like a sequence of dominoes, and
Yeah.
different hormones are pulling strings at different times
Okay.
is really key.
Okay.
So those are the basics, the day 3 hormones. Then we go to the second layer, which I would say is the other symphony of hormones in the body. So
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be insulin, blood sugar, methylation. You're looking at all of the other factors that impact hormones. And this is where we get into a full thyroid panel, understanding what the thyroid is doing. And then the third layer, I would say, is like cortisol. Cortisol's a funny one because it either needs to be in saliva or urine. A blood test for cortisol is almost never going to tell us anything.
Wow.
And we're basically testing multiple times throughout the day what's the cortisol pattern. So it's not really what does cortisol do at one point in the day. It's really let's look at an average day and see what that cortisol level does. And
Okay.
does it have the map that it should have?
Yeah.
Again, at different points in the day, different levels of cortisol are necessary.
Yeah.
So cortisol is really important. And then the metabolites of hormones. So at that point, we're really testing DHEA, testosterone, estrogen metabolites, and progesterone metabolites. I prefer to see that for a whole month.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one spot test because, again, I want to understand what the symphony of hormones is, not just the one spot in your day, what it looks like.
Okay, yeah, that makes
So,
total sense based on what you've been sharing. But to be honest, as a fertility patient, like when I go to the clinic, they're just like, okay, we do that first round that you shared about like
mhm,
FSH, AMH, LH, all those ones. And yeah, they have done it on like day 3 as you suggested, but then it stops there. So
mhm. Yeah,
How
that's really common.
Yeah, how can people get access to all this other information? Where do they request this from? And how do people go about that?
Yeah. So if your clinic isn't going to do the in-depth deep dive, which isn't abnormal, I feel like most fertility clinics are not equipped with the practitioners that can actually understand these results. Functional tests are like they're so deep, rich with information that you can study. I've studied Dutch test, for example, which is
Hmm.
one of the deep dive tests that we like to do. I've studied that test for 10 years.
Wow.
And still, I can talk to another provider and be like, oh, snap, I didn't see that pattern before. You're just constantly learning things and the
Uh-huh.
nuances about what's in that test.
Uh-huh.
So you have to be like really paying attention and like prioritizing the learning of that information in a
Hmm.
way that you can utilize it and apply it to the person that's sitting in front of you. So essentially you need to find someone that is is able to understand those tests from the perspective and the lens of fertility, which is also unique, right? I
Right.
would say the other, sorry, so I wanted to offer someone, if someone's listening and they're like, I don't want to invest in all of this testing, maybe I'm just starting out in my journey and I want to understand better what's happening on a root cause level, but I'm not at the quite at the point to go to a clinic and work with someone to get
Uh-huh.
all of the testing. That's exactly why we launched Madre Fertility. So the company that I launched is basically our approach. It's called a smart fertility analysis
Okay.
and it's free.
Oh my gosh.
Free.
Yeah.
And it's basically my brain downloaded into tech. So you when I tell you I love tech, I really
You
do
do.
love tech.
Yeah.
So out of the thousands of people that I've spent analyzing their labs and putting together their picture of what's happening for them, what they're experiencing, and how this shows up on a test result,
Hmm.
we basically put all of that into the analyzer.
Wow. That
So
is huge.
people can go to this analyzer, do like it takes 4 minutes probably, and it will spit out what it thinks or what my brain says is like the top things that are the struggles or the obstacles that are keeping them from getting pregnant.
Wow. But you have to have already your
No,
values, correct?
no
Or no?
labs.
No
No
labs.
labs needed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay. That's
so
a
it's
really
taking
unique
out the lab
approach.
piece. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not to say that I don't value labs. I very much value labs. So
Yes.
this tool is a great starting point
Yeah.
for people that are like, I'm just starting out on this. I don't know what I need to focus on. I'm overwhelmed by all of the information. How do I like narrow this on
Uh-huh.
to what my needs are, right? And if we could narrow the needs and the obstacles, then we've removed a hurdle that
Hmm.
so many people spend years and years wasting time
Hmm.
trying to figure out why they're not getting pregnant.
Hmm.
You can always go back and say, I don't believe you. Let's do the testing and see.
Yeah.
But we'll compare the analysis to actual data that we have from people.
Uh-huh.
And it's spot on. It's so creepy.
I love
Like it's
that.
spot on in a creepy way. Like, how
Yeah.
did it know that?
Oh, that is
Oh,
so cool to get to see validation in
y-
your method there. That is really cool.
yeah,
I love
it
that. And
it's a
because,
tool.
yeah, labs tend to run on the pricier side if you're getting
They
this
are.
many. And then
Yeah.
how often do you recommend reassessing those too?
We don't. It depends.
Oh, okay.
And it depends on like people's resources, right? So
Yeah.
we have some clients that are like, literally give me a blood draw to do every month. Okay, cool. If you want to spend the money on that, cool. We'll
Yeah.
just have it ready for you. All good. But other people are like, yeah, this is expensive and I don't necessarily want to do this every single month.
Hmm.
We, for our clients, will give them monitors. So they're doing at home monitoring. We're getting a lot of data and information that we're collecting
Okay.
on a day to day basis. We do temperature and urine hormone tracking at home.
Oh, cool.
So we give them devices for both. And at the end, they'll do the tests that feel relevant to needing a retest, right? You don't need to
Got it.
retest every single thing.
Yeah.
If we were like, hey, insulin is your biggest concern, we definitely want to see what that insulin looks like before we say, okay, you guys are good, go have fun and get pregnant. So yeah, we want to monitor the things that are the most relevant. We want to have feedback, but we don't want that to be the hurdle for people to get
Yeah.
the confirmation that they need, that they're ready to start
Yeah.
trying and having a healthy pregnancy.
Okay. I love that you've considered that and are working ways around it. And that makes total sense. Let's just focus in on the areas that we have been working on to try to improve and get to the best range possible. So, if we do find an area, as you mentioned, in your example, you said insulin, can hormones be adjusted to maybe a normal or optimal range? Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
that's like everything we do all day long.
Love that to
So
hear that because again, like when you get your results, at least from that basic testing, you feel like that's like set in stone. And that's what
yeah,
you're made to feel, at least too, from physicians or most physicians, like, oh, your levels are here. That means we need to work quickly with you because your chances are
are
slim to none
zilch.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We've seen people with AMH of 0.3, which is very low. We've seen them get pregnant. So
Yeah.
regardless of what that number is, they can get pregnant. But we've also seen those numbers go up. And AMH is the hardest one. That's the only one that I'll be like, we're not guaranteeing that this is going to go up. It
Yeah.
would be great if it goes up. It will mean amazing things for you if it goes up.
Yeah.
But we're not going to focus all of our energy on that one particular number. Most fertility doctors, that's the ground that they're standing on. This number is low. If you don't do this right now, you're screwed.
Yeah.
From our perspective, we're like, we've seen that number go up so frequently that is this really, we're not going to guarantee it, but we can certainly say that it's possible
Mm-hmm.
to get that number to optimal, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a 39-year-old that we're working with right now, and she came in, her AMH was 0.3 or 0.2, something like that. And she came in and they were like, we want to freeze embryos because they're already in a partnership. They want to have children together.
Uh-huh.
They're just not ready right now.
Yeah.
And he's 32, so he's I really can't be a dad right now.
Yeah.
And she's my clock is running out, and these doctors are like, if I don't do this right now, I'm screwed. So we've been working with them to optimize egg quality, which is really important for her at her age with her egg, the number of eggs that she has. And we were like, hey, let's try and see if this AMH goes up. That's just great. You're going to harvest more eggs.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, her AMH is now at 1.4,
What?
which is well
Wow.
above optimal for her age. So it's great because when she does go for that retrieval, we anticipate seeing the result of that being more eggs harvested. And because we've focused on the quality, not the quantity, they're high quality eggs. We anticipate that when the egg and sperm are combined, they should make really great embryos.
Yeah.
Freezing those embryos is going to be better, and
Yes.
hopefully they will have more of them. And we don't know yet. I think they're going for their cycle in May. We'll see what
I'm
the outcomes are.
wishing her the best of luck, definitely.
Yeah.
That's so encouraging, I'm sure, for her, though, for sure. So, as you mentioned with AMH, that's a harder one to pull in the right direction. Are there any times in which there's like people that you're honestly like you're past a certain point almost and it's irreversible in essence?
Yeah.
Is that ever come up?
Unfortunately, there are conversations that I have like that, and it breaks my heart when those
Yeah.
conversations have to happen. But I tell people up front, we're going to keep it real.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sell you anything. I don't care if you work with me. I'm just going to tell you what you need to know. And sometimes that, unfortunately, is sorry, your body is looking like it's going through perimenopause, menopause, and we're not messing with it. That's not
Mm-hmm.
our zone. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what we specialize in. There are other clinics that would be happy to support someone in that case, but that's not us. So usually that point is a woman who is usually above 42, 43.
Mm-hmm.
Her FSH is trending towards 20 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
And her AMH is below 0.2, 0.1.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the point at which, essentially, what that group of hormones is saying is the brain is telling the ovaries, make follicles.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few follicles to make, so the body is doing a very poor job of producing follicles and ovulating because
Mm-hmm.
that signal is just so strong.
Mm-hmm.
But the ovary just doesn't have the reserves to respond to it. We had a 48-year-old 2 years ago, 48-year-old that was like, I'll do anything. We don't want to do IVF. We really want to get pregnant. And I was like, you're 48.
Yeah.
This is an uphill even for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she tested her day 3 hormones and they looked good except for the AMH. Her
Yeah.
AMH was 0.3. Everything else looked really good. So I was like, I'll be honest, like, this is unusual.
Yeah.
We're not sure that this will happen, but we can try and we can see what to do because your body isn't in menopause yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if it's not in menopause yet, then maybe there's a window for you to try something, especially if you don't want to do IVF, right?
Mm-hmm.
The IVF world had already written her off anyway. She was like, they're telling me that the only way they'll do this is if I get an egg donor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have an egg donor. What do
Mm-hmm.
I do? So we worked with her for a little bit of time.
Has infertility taken too much from you? Are you unsure how you can keep going on this path? Maybe you've tried some affirmations, but it's just not cutting it. If this sounds like you need the Resilience Roadmap for Trying to Conceive. It's a free step-by-step guide to reclaim your joy and unpause your life that I use with clients to get unparalleled results. Get yours today by going to www.leanicolecoaching.com. That's LEANICOLE coaching.com, or check the show notes for the link.
Her AMH did go up. Unfortunately, it went up and then it went down and then she was in menopause, like perimenopause. So it was a little bit of, oh, it's working. And then, sorry, that was, so I always say my goal is to have you if you are working with us, then it's coming from a place of, yes, we want to do this regardless of the outcome, not because of something that I've promised you that you're going to get.
Yeah. And sometimes I think a big piece of it is just knowing that, hey, and I'm assuming for her, maybe a piece of it is just knowing I gave it everything I could.
I gave it everything I got. Yeah,
and
exactly.
I'm at peace with that.
Yep.
And then I can move on with maybe some other steps or other options, possibly, if that's a part of her life plan.
Yeah. And I think she got more open to the idea of an egg donor in the process of doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
She then came back and was like, actually, I think I'm going to consider what they're telling me to do. Cool, no problem. But in the process, she way optimized her health.
Yeah.
So if she goes ahead with the egg donor route, she's going to have a likelier chance of success, but be in a better place as a new mom to take care of her child, to be healthy for that child, right?
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, would she still have done what she did, still have made the choice that she made, given the outcome that she had? She would probably say, hell yeah, that's a no-brainer, because her and her husband significantly transformed their life out of that in a very short period of time. Yeah, it's really, is it worth it? The question is on each individual to say, what does it mean for me to approach it in this way? And how do I feel about it? And what happens if the outcome isn't what I expect? But yeah.
Yeah, it's so great to know that, again, aside from maybe some select cases in which, yes, you're in menopause or you're really close to full on menopause, for the most part, all other conditions, you're able to really work with them and readjust the hormones within the body to optimize the fertility. But I guess my next question is, how can you actually do that? What types of things do we need to do to move the needle to a more pro fertility status within our body? And is this done within our own day to day activities and nutrition, or can this also be done medically, like with hormonal supplements and such?
Yeah. So, in terms of how we approach it, it's really a couple of tiers of things that people have to focus on. One is getting rid of the things that are going to be in the way. And that one's really easy, right?
Hmm.
Toxins are always in the way. Getting rid of them is a really great thing.
Okay.
Some form of detox will help support better functioning of the liver, which then supports all of the hormones. That's a really key foundation for us. After that, we're really looking at a three-prong approach: diet, lifestyle, supplements, and herbs.
Okay.
And I put supplements and herbs together.
Yeah.
So diet has to focus on the optimal foods for this individual so that their body goes from stress to relax or survival to reproduction, right?
Hmm.
So there's going to be a core for the diet. The lifestyle is going to be a combination of, when people hear lifestyle, I feel like most of them are in their heads like, I'm going to work out more often. I know what I need to do.
Hmm.
With fertility, it's a little more nuanced. Like, more working out is not actually going to get better results. Sometimes it works against the fertility stuff.
Hmm.
So, really finding that optimal balance with what makes sense for them to do. For some people, it's let's turn that dial way down. You're way overworking the HIIT workouts and all of that. I'm into it. You just don't need it right now.
Yeah. Put
And,
that on pause for
or,
a moment. Yeah.
yeah. Or if you really love it, then we usually find a way to integrate it and put it into some sort of cycle plan so that they can do it at some points in their cycle, but not all the time.
Hmm.
So that's the lifestyle piece. I think also devalued way too frequently, but should be like top priority in my book, is sleep.
Hmm.
And it sleep and how well you wake up in the morning. So really, if you can't get out of bed or you're hitting the snooze button, there was a really cool paper that I was reading that was like, if you hit your snooze for more than 8 minutes or something in the morning, you were more likely to have disease, like chronic disease, than not in
Wow.
the future. That's a
Interesting.
little mind blowing to me. But
Yeah.
it makes sense. It's really that, do you wake up feeling rested and energized and ready to go in your day? Or are you really struggling to get up out of bed?
Hmm.
Or, and I would tack on to that the caffeine. So if you need caffeine to function, that's just as equal to hitting the snooze button.
Mm.
Really, we're looking at, is that optimized? And if it's not, what are we doing to optimize so that when you're sleeping, you're getting all of the amazing hormones, and honestly, like resets are happening while we sleep.
Hmm.
So if those are not happening, then how do we make those happen? Because those are going to inform, more than anything else, I believe, how your hormones do.
So sleep is
Um,
a huge piece. So
Sleep
working
is a
on those
huge piece.
sleep habits, good sleep
Yeah,
hygiene, doing
yeah,
everything you can to preserve that as much as possible.
yeah,
Okay.
yep, exactly. And then the last piece is supplements. And supplements really, I think, sometimes get a very bad rap, especially in the IVF world.
Hmm.
It's, oh no, don't take that crap. Don't take it. It's garbage. Or there are the like cool reproductive endocrinologists that are giving out supplements, which then goes to the other extreme where people are taking high doses of things that they have no business taking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not personalized or customized in any way, right?
Yeah.
So our approach is really, it's not just fertility supplements. It's not the egg quality things that are always going to support your fertility.
Yeah.
It's really assessing what are the underlying factors
Yeah.
and which supplements do you need when.
Yeah.
So almost always our strategy is, what are the key underlying obstacles or issues that are keeping you from being able to get and stay pregnant? And then we will create like a pyramid. So we start with, maybe someone has gut health issues. So then the gut is going to be the core or the foundation of that pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And each phase is really going to require a different set of supplements. So it's not
Mm.
take 40 things all at once all the time,
Yeah.
because your body's, what am I doing with all this? It's
Yeah.
way too many pills. I don't know what you're telling me to do. So I'm just going to do nothing.
Yeah.
I'm going to make very expensive urine. Um, so instead, if we can really regulate when people take what and for how long, and able to document, okay, if we're taking this for gut health, on average, we should take this for 3 weeks to maybe 6 weeks max.
Mm.
And within that 6 weeks, we should see XYZ happen, right? If we
Mm.
didn't get the outcome we expected, we need to change the strategy. So
Yeah.
that's how our system works, is we want the feedback, quickly, and we want to be going to the next stage if we've addressed the stage that we're at
And then once you
adequately.
move on, the underlying stage, though, typically it's okay. It doesn't need that extra supplementation once it's gotten to a certain goalpost that you've decided or designed for your client. Okay.
Exactly. That's the ideal.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we might say, hey, we really need you to keep some sort of maintenance plan for your gut before we move to the phase 2.
Yeah.
I'm always conscious about how many supplements are people taking,
Yeah.
because if you have too many things happening, if I consider them signaling compounds. Everything you put into the body is a signal for the body to do a specific action. And if you have, work on the liver, get rid of this hormone, work on the gut, take this probiotic, take this prenatal, take this, take that. You have 8 or 10 different signals happening. Most people are like, pile all that together. Let me take it all at once. And if they don't have, if they took all of those things at once, the signals are not clear. All of those things don't necessarily go and actually signal the things that we're trying to get them to signal. Instead, taking it slower, quote unquote, is going to help people move through the phases faster, because one thing at a time, right? Let's focus on your gut. Let's really clear the gut stuff.
Yeah.
Great. That's clear. Now let's focus on the liver. Let's clear the liver stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Done? Cool. Let's go to blood sugar. So we can like
Yeah.
really move through it faster if we know which ones need to go first, which is going to go second, and layer as much as we need to, but not too much.
Love that. So, going back real quick to nutrition, is there a specific, do you have a custom dietary plan for each client, or is there kind of general rules about nutrition?
Yeah, there are custom plans.
Are you interested in getting the answer to this question? Well, this is your personal invite to join our exclusive Facebook group to dive deeper into the world of fertility with bonus clips, behind the scenes content, and intimate discussions. Here you can connect with fellow tribe members, share your experiences, and contribute your insights to shape the future of the show. And it's easy to join. Just search Tru Fertility Tribe on Facebook, answer a few questions, and you're in. I also have the direct link in the show notes below. See you there. Okay.
Yeah.
I had another question to where this might fit in for overall adjustments to your hormones and finding that optimal support there for your fertility. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that cortisol and noradrenaline also have an impact on your fertility hormones. So can you talk a little bit about where that fits in as far as stress, mindset,
Yep.
way that we're looking at things, overwhelm, since it's a lot of times when people are struggling with fertility, it's a very stressful time of their life.
Yeah, totally. So adrenaline and noradrenaline are instant hormones. Our
Hmm.
body makes them and then they like fizzle away within minutes.
Hmm.
So they're not going to be the hormones that stick with us.
Okay.
But noradrenaline and adrenaline cause a sequence of chain reactions that affect every hormone in the body.
Uh-huh.
Let's envision an average person that goes to work, they're sitting in traffic, someone cut them off, a surge of adrenaline and noradrenaline went into our body, and that started our day, right?
Uh-huh.
And then they go to work and they have an interaction with a coworker or whatever. They're like, "Arr!" Frustration, another
Yes.
surge,
Yes.
right? And then maybe they have an interaction with their boss and they're like, "Oh, fuck, another deadline,"
Yeah.
right? Excuse my language. I curse a
It's
lot.
all good.
and then and then they have another, and then they get home and they have a interaction with their partner that again causes surge. Multiples of these surge, if we have enough of those throughout our day. And noradrenaline and adrenaline, if you want to know what it feels like, it's literally if you envision yourself in the in the middle of a forest, you're lost, you don't know where the freak to go to get out of the forest, and
Yeah.
you like see a tiger that's like just staring at you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Serious survival mode, right?
Yeah.
That level, that's our like limbic brain that is in charge of our survival.
Hmm.
It's what has been with us since the beginning. That's how the human species have survived for so long.
Hmm.
But the downside of that limbic brain is it doesn't realize that you're not actually in the forest with a tiger. You're in traffic and someone's cutting you off. And in the grand scheme of things, it really makes no freaking difference. But in the
Hmm.
moment, you're like, ah, how dare you?
Yeah,
I'm gonna chase
exactly.
you down, right? Like it, our body's creating the same kind of response as being in that jungle with the tiger, and it's ready to fight or flight.
Hmm.
And every time we go into that fight or flight, we're giving another little clue to the reproductive system that it should be quiet and take a back seat.
Hmm.
And if we're getting that signal again and again through the course of a day, that signal is literally every little time that we have that, it's moved us out of reproductive mode. That's the gist of the noradrenaline adrenaline thing. And then every time that signal happens, it's a downstream reaction. It triggers ACTH,
Hmm.
it triggers TSH, it triggers FSH.
Hmm.
So the core pituitary hormones are triggered within seconds of that hormone of the sympathetic response being activated. Once those are triggered, it's triggering all of the downstream hormones. So
Okay.
now we have a signal to make cortisol, we have a signal to make thyroid hormones, and we have a signal to make FSH is like follicles or ovarian hormone. But the FSH in that case is not actual follicles. It's more like we need estrogen. And
Mm.
estrogen has a response to being a building block of white blood cells. So it's activating our immune system to be on hyper alert for
Wow.
potential attackers.
Wow. And that probably leads then to more propensity to develop autoimmune conditions as well,
Yeah,
too, right? Yeah.
yep, absolutely.
Wow.
So if we're constantly under this attack, we've activated the three major systems that are responsible for mounting the right ratio of red blood cells and white blood cells that are
Hmm.
going to respond to the need that our body has. So if we're constantly triggering this need, we're pulling all of our energy out of the kind of like harmonious state
Hmm.
to, I need this right now. It's like a boss that's, nope, forget everything you're doing. Focus on this right now.
Hmm.
I need this in 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And then you're like, go time. Okay, I got to do everything to like do this. And if you keep, but if that boss were to keep doing that to you all day long, you really wouldn't have time to do any of your real work. You would
Yeah.
go back to your boss and be like, hey, I might need another person to come in and do all this because you keep giving
Yeah.
me urgent tasks.
Uh-huh.
So that's what we're doing to our body when we're constantly in that state.
So it would be definitely wise then if we feel like, again, this is something that is actively happening for us on a regular basis to really learn some great coping tools, some great like mind body tools, you know, again, really working through that to be able to calm yourself and maintain a sense of peace on a more regular basis,
Yes.
rather than being
Y-
in that hyper alert state.
yep.
And that will
Yes,
impact your
and.
hormones. Yes, and
Yeah.
okay.
Yes, and. Yes, we can and should have some tools in our back pocket that we can pull out on an instant's notice. And hopefully they're not meditate for an hour, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully they're quick. Here's a 30-second thing that you
Yes.
can do to reset your nervous system. And those are crucial because we go into those states often. But in addition to that, we need the awareness, and that comes over time. We need that awareness to be like, oh, I just got triggered. Oh, I just went into fight or flight. But the number of times that we're not doing that in a day is really high. And
Hmm.
like I can use myself as an example. When I went to medical school, I was in my first year, and there was a group of us that were walking back to my room since it was on campus. So we were like all walking back, and I sighed a couple of times, and I was just like, and my colleague at the time, she was like, "Are you okay? Are you really okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. Why?"
Yeah.
And I just heard you sigh a couple of times, and I feel like that might be like you're stressed or you need to talk about something. And I was like, "No, I'm good. What the hell are you talking about? I'm a badass."
Yeah.
Um, and that was my response to her. And it wasn't till I took a year to like meditate in a monastery.
Wow.
That year, I remember like actually feeling like what my nervous system feels like when I'm calm and relaxed and receptive. And I was like, oh yeah, I was way stressed, but I
I
had no way of understanding that I was stressed.
I
So it's
totally have that same experience. I didn't realize how stressed I was or how much tension I was carrying around on an everyday basis until you remove that and for months. It takes months sometimes to really get rid of that and to
yeah.
even people don't really notice sometimes when they're going into that and that is their constant state of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like that fight or flight mode. If we're so used to being in that mode, our body just thinks that's our natural mode,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
at least, and this is why I love working with badass women. Like most of our clients are doctors, engineers, right? Like they're really successful, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Yet this is so fundamental to the way that we are. And I understand it because I'm one of those people, right?
Yeah.
I get that it's really hard to understand when we're stressed.
Uh-huh.
So it really needs us to have enough awareness or a guide that's you're stressed. Oh, you were stressed.
Mhm.
Oh, you're taking it on too much. Oh, where are your boundaries? We need someone who is able to step in from like a observation perspective and say, maybe have you considered?
Yeah.
And some of our clients are really great at that. And they're like, yeah, you're totally right. Like, I got it. Thank you. And then others will deny, deny, deny. And some of those people have not gotten pregnant. And we reflected this back to you. We see it in your labs, right? Like,
Mhm.
you can't lie to me.
Yeah, the hard
I
data is
see what's
there.
happening. But if you're not ready to accept that's what's happening and your body's in this state all the time, there's no amount of supplements that's going to fix that.
Mhm.
And it's heartbreaking because we see these women and they're like, ah, You said this was going to work. And I'm like, yeah, I said this was going to work when you're using the program. Like, not using the program because I've pointed this out to you so many times. And you're like, yeah, that's not me. I don't need the mind body stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you really need the mind body stuff.
Yeah.
That's when you really need it. So,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I think and I think that's the hard stuff. That's the supplements and stuff are relatively easy, and the diet is relatively easy after you get the hang of it. But the mind body stuff is the constant, am I safe? Am I giving my body that signal that I'm safe in this world, or am I giving the signal of I should be concerned and worried and stressed out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that's really what I work with my clients on solely is really just that
Mm,
mindset and mind body
yeah.
work to help them
Yeah.
along on their fertility journeys. Just wanted to get your expert sense on how that
Yeah.
actually plays into the hormonal piece and where that fits into your work with your clients too.
Yeah. It's so big. I'm
Yeah.
so glad that you do that because it's so big. It's like probably the core thing that is
Mm-hmm.
undervalued
Mm-hmm.
in our society because we're like, oh, you can just fix that with IVF.
Totally.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't need to figure out this whole awareness, mindfulness,
Oh,
chilling
yeah.
the heck out, but
Totally.
IVF.
Thank you for that. So just to clarify too,
Mm,
do all women with infertility or struggling to conceive that is maybe not explained by a physical condition like a blocked tube, for instance, do they all have some tweaks to make within their hormone profile? Is that an accurate statement then?
almost always, yes.
Almost always, yes.
So we see all too often, if there were two groups that we work with the most, it's the recurrent pregnancy loss mamas and the unexplained infertility mamas. And those two camps I love because they have done everything. They've
Mm-hmm.
tried everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I don't know what the heck else to do. And my doctor thinks everything is normal. So it's unexplained
Mm-hmm.
why this is happening. Either I can't get pregnant or I can get pregnant, but I can't stay pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those almost always have something happening under the surface. And I say almost always because I always tell people, like, if we do all this testing and everything comes out perfect, bill of optimal health, then we're not the right fit. Like, we didn't
Mm-hmm.
figure out what was going on. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry. Everything actually looks normal.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still waiting for that person that I'm going to tell that to.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So again, most of the time, there is something underlying going there. You may just not have found it at this point.
Right.
What about something like endometriosis? Is that also have a hormonal basis then?
Yes. Endometriosis is more complicated and it's hormones, it's the immune system, and it probably has a genetic component to it. That's not to
Mm,
say it's not changeable. It's just there's a little bit of predisposition, and then you add in the potential toxins that they're almost always exposed to, and you add in the hormone dysfunction and the ability or inability to metabolize those hormones properly. It all stacks up to, dang, this is not happening because of specific things.
mhm,
But with that said, so many of our endometriosis women go on to have healthy pregnancies
mhm,
and babies.
mhm,
So it's not impossible. It just takes a lot of detective work to be like, where is this coming from and how do we fix it? And it's not always endometriosis. When I learned it in school, which hopefully has changed now, but they taught us it was estrogen dominance, which I'm like, I've literally never seen that in clinical practice.
uh,
That is not actually true.
yeah.
So then what is true, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
why is the body creating this situation and how do we address it? And there's almost always a way to address it.
That gives us so much hope. Definitely for all the listeners too. Definitely gives us hope to move forward. despite the condition that we have. I think the only other thing that I wanted to ask you about was about you mentioned earlier thyroid and the thyroid hormones and such. And again, I do hear and people hear about full thyroid panel, and you hear that term a lot. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Is that something that's necessary? And can you get into any specific tips about helping support your thyroid and your thyroid hormones?
So thyroid is very interesting because it's not just TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. That hormone does not have anything to do with the thyroid. It comes from the brain.
Wow.
So that hormone is usually the one that people are testing, but that's the signal to the thyroid to take action.
Mm-hmm.
If the action has been taken, we wouldn't know just from the TSH.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially that TSH could be down, but remember I said that our sympathetic nervous system is signaling all of the brain hormones, ACT, TSH, FSH. So if our nervous system is the signal for those, that TSH can still be high without any negative impact to the thyroid, and vice versa. You may have a negative thyroid not functioning well, but that TSH looks quote unquote normal.
Mm.
So it's essentially like we're assuming that the brain to thyroid connection is intact and they're signaling back and forth the way they should. That is almost always not true.
Mm.
So then we really need a better understanding of what's happening with the thyroid. So that's
Uh-huh.
really where that full panel comes in. It's T3, T4, free T3, free T4. You could do a reverse T3. There's debates about that. And then thyroid antibodies. There's 3 antibodies that we usually like to see.
Mm-hmm.
And the antibodies are just test once. You don't need to keep redoing them unless they're positive.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people have antibodies to the thyroid that you would never know based on their thyroid panel.
Oh.
Essential, very important to test, because studies have shown that people with antibodies to the thyroid often have recurrent pregnancy loss. If
Wow.
that's you, then getting the antibodies tested and really like understanding the immune level function
Yeah.
is an important link to staying pregnant.
Wow, that's such great information and how they all kind of work together. And yeah, you assume TSH is going to tell you about the functioning of your thyroid, but as you said, that's not always the case. And then with the thyroid hormones, if you do find something that is going on there, it would be, I'm assuming, the same approach that you mentioned for the traditional kind of general path of the program that you support with like diet and those
Yes.
types of things that's still
Yeah.
affected. Okay.
Diet, supplements, lifestyle.
Sleep.
It's, believe it or not, a lot of things overlap. So if you're supporting one, you're also supporting the other.
Mm-hmm.
But having the information means that you are a little bit maybe more nuanced about how you're supporting those things. So if your adrenals need support and your thyroid needs support, very common scenario. Supporting your adrenals also supports your thyroid and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing both of those means that we can now have outcomes related to both of those, and we can better understand that when you're tired, thyroid tired, is going to look a little bit different than when you're cortisol tired or adrenal fatigued.
Mm.
And being able to separate those out just gives us better feedback loops to say, hey, we're on the right track. Things are improving. This is what we should be seeing.
Okay. Really cool. So, in summary, we now know that again, it's not just our basic typical fertility hormones at play, even though that gives us a lot of great information. There's a whole array of hormones that actually interplay and work with each other to fully support you in your health holistically and your fertility. You can assess your hormones and kind of reassess as often as you feel like is necessary. You can improve your hormones and get them to a more optimal level for most people. And you do that with a combination of nutrition, lifestyle, and also supplements, targeted supplements, not just throw in everything, right? And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We talked about so many aspects and so many things today. Was there anything else that you feel like you needed to share with the audience or guest? Or do you feel like that was a pretty good synopsis of everything?
That was quite a deep dive.
It was definitely. I loved every aspect. I ate it all up, and I'm sure all of my listeners did as well. So, thank you so, so much again for your time. Dr. Aumatma, I mentioned your Instagram handle. Would
Yeah.
that be, again, your primary place that you'd want to connect?
Yeah, that's a great place for us to connect. And we do have a gift for the listeners. So if
Yes.
people want to download it, it's called the Holistic Fertility Blueprint, and it will guide you through our philosophy and like understanding what might be at the root of what's happening.
Okay, definitely. I can put that in the show notes, the link to that. And then I will also put in the show notes, as you mentioned, your other free resource at Madre Fertility. People can find that and use that and start diving into understanding what's going on with their own fertility and body.
Ah,
Love that.
love
Thank you
it. Thank you
so,
so
so
much.
much. Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to share these stories, information, and tips with you, or really just allowing me to connect with you on a subject that's so dear and important to your life. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and do me a solid and share this with your friends or anyone that you think might benefit from hearing this. Also, I'd love it if you could leave a rating or review for a deeper dive on today's episode, bonus content, and to connect with others in this space. I invite you to join Tru Fertility Tribe Facebook group. And last but not least, let's be friends on Instagram, where I post almost daily. You can find me at Tru Fertility. Wishing you all baby dust. Till next time. Bye.